So let me just introduce them. Scott Lowry is the founder of Promise One Companies, an ETA holding company with principals who have acquired over 60 businesses. Scott became an ETA entrepreneur after receiving his MBA here at Weatherhead. And Scott is also a board member of Promise Partners, which is a nonprofit ETA accelerator. And he is the Richard Osborne Professor of Entrepreneurship here at Weatherhead, where he teaches ETA. Kiley Smith is a proven senior lender. As I describe her, she's a business person who does lending. And she is focused on mergers and acquisitions and has financed over 70 acquisitions. Kiley currently is the Senior Vice President and Team Leader at CF Bank. Since 1892, CF Bank has provided boutique banking services to companies in Northeast Ohio, Cincinnati, Columbus, and Indianapolis. She earned a BS degree in marketing with a concentration in Japanese from Bentley College and an MBA focusing on strategy and organizational behavior from Weatherhead. Welcome and thank you, Scott and Kiley.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, so let's jump into it. So I want to ask you a question first. So why do people typically get an MBA? Anybody? Anybody got an MBA? Why did you get an MBA? Why did you get your MBA?
Advance in business.
Advance in business. Anybody else? What are some other reasons? Advance in business. So like with a big company? Networking. I know there's got to be at least one or two more MBAs in this room. Networking. Anybody else? In the back there.
Higher pay opportunities.
Higher pay opportunities. Anybody else?
Just develop leadership skills.
Develop leadership skills. Okay, cool. Kiley, how about you? Why did you get your MBA? Kiley's a Weatherhead grad, right?
So we went to MBA school together, but I was at National City, and to be honest, they paid for it, which is lovely. But then also, I really loved learning. And Case had a very similar learning pattern that my undergrad did. It was group learning, and you really got to experience working with people and also growing and learning. So that's why.
So pretty common answers. Most people get an MBA because they want to develop leadership skills, they want to advance in a big company, get a bigger job, bigger paycheck, that sort of thing. There's a few rogue players who might get an MBA and be thinking about some sort of a startup, but most people take the big company path. So we're here today talking about entrepreneurship through acquisition, and Richard Osborne, who was my professor, and you had classes with Richard as well, right? 2 classes, yeah. Was really one of the first people teaching this concept as a viable career path for people that end up in MBA type programs or otherwise. And so he saw beyond the traditional 2 paths for MBA graduates. So startup, big company, and ETA. So I like to think about this as Richard Osborne had a nickname, the Gorilla. And anybody else in the room know Richard, spent time with Richard? Yeah, we've got a few Richard fans. He introduced me to entrepreneurship through acquisition by having a guest in the class, which was his primary teaching style. So he'd bring in these really interesting people. And I remember the day that Mal Mixon was the guest. And at the time, I knew of Mal. He was written about in Cranes on a regular basis. His company, Invacare, was a Fortune 1000 company. It was traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So I was excited to meet Mal. Probably has some interesting things to say. So Richard starts off the conversation with Mal and says, "Mal, how'd you get started?" And Mal said, "Well, I was a younger man than I am now, and I saw an opportunity to buy this company for $8 million. So I took all the money I had, which was $8,000. I got investors, and we bought this company for $8 million, and that company is called Invacare." And my mind exploded at that point. I was like, wait a minute. You bought that company using $8,000 of your own money, and now you're CEO of a publicly traded Fortune 1000 business? I was like, I got $8,000, So this idea of ETA, really hit me at that point. And this, the fact that this is Richard Osborne, he had all kinds of great quotes. This is one of my favorites. Dance like nobody's watching. The fact that Richard was teaching this was, for me, it was 22 years ago. He had been teaching this 20 years prior to that. The fact that this has been a thing in Cleveland for the past 40 years is another one of Cleveland's best kept secrets. So he was way ahead of his time. So entrepreneurship through acquisition is really a lower risk path to business ownership, much lower risk compared to doing a startup. And it's basically what Mal did. So the ETA entrepreneur takes their management experience, whatever money they have. My deal with my first investor, I said, how much money do I need to bring to the table? He said, I don't care how much you bring as long as it's everything you got. And that's what I did, because he wanted me to have some skin in the game, which I was happy to do. So the ETA entrepreneur partners with an investor, and then they put their collective experience together to go find, acquire, and then run that business. Typically the ETA entrepreneur, in my case, when I did it, it was me, Mal did it, takes over that business and runs it as CEO. And typically they're the average, and there's a lot of data on this, Stanford's been tracking this stuff since 1984. The average company's like around 8 million, so somewhere between 5 and 15 million in revenue is pretty common for a first-time ETA entrepreneur. Okay, so Kiley, when did you first hear about this ETA thing? Like when did the word, the new definition of ETA come up for you?
Honest? Do you want me to be
estimated
honest?
time over, yeah, seriously.
Probably this week.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
I mean, because we just use the word promise. So
Promise partners.
Yes. And
Yeah.
oh no, when I was in your class, that was probably 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, I lived it with Gorilla. He
Yeah.
was absolutely inspirational,
Yeah.
and I wish I almost did what you did.
Yeah.
But yes, I think about 3
Well,
weeks
you're going
ago.
to.
Oh, I know I'm going
Well,
to.
wait, is your boss in the room?
Yeah, he is. Where are you?
In a while.
In a while, in a long
After you
while.
like crush it for CF for a little while longer,
Yes.
right? Yes. Yeah, right? I mean, to me, it blows my mind that we could, I have this experience, I've been teaching this for 8 years now, and every semester when I start the class, there's a room full of MBAs, and we put this idea on the table, and I say, how many people thought about this as a possible career path before? And nobody raises their hand, like literally. It blows my mind. But that was exactly where I was when I heard Mal's story. And then once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It just became the obvious, path for me. So I said lower risk path to business ownership. So when I say, generally speaking, when you're out in the world, if somebody says entrepreneurship, what do people think? Entrepreneurship equals what? Startup, right? Entrepreneurship equals startup. The problem in my mind is math. Okay, the problem with startups is math. So everybody anecdotally talks about 90% of startups fail. Well, what's even more interesting about that is the 10% that actually become viable businesses are still in business, say like after 3 years, that sort of thing. Only 10% of the 10% that succeed ever become bigger than $1 million in revenue. So if you do a startup, you have a 1% chance of becoming the owner of a company doing greater than $1 million in revenue. Okay, if you read the Stanford Search Fund Primer, and they've done the best job to date, and we're working on this here at Weatherhead, bringing some additional statistics to that conversation. 67% of people that pursue an ETA type strategy, in this case they focus on a particular model, the traditional search fund, 67% of those people end up buying a company, and the average revenue of that business is 8 million. So I look at this, I'm like, okay, 1% chance to become the owner of a $1 million revenue company, or 67%. Now it doesn't take an MBA to figure out which one's better, okay? This is a busy slide. We'll share this. There's this, Kiley has been lending to ETA entrepreneurs for years. You learned about this when you got your MBA, but the ETA world is really just starting to organize, and it's organizing quickly. Okay, there was an article in Bloomberg 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think the headline was, "People are choosing to buy small businesses rather than go to work for McKinsey." It was like MBAs, opt out of McKinsey for small company ownership, something like that. You can find it if you search McKinsey, small company, something like that. It's becoming a known thing, and there's various models of entrepreneurship through acquisition that are starting to organize as well. This is a high-level view. There's, some people will have a presentation like this with like 6 or 7 models. Generally speaking, there's what I would call a sponsored search, a traditional search, or a solo search, and there's certainly hybrids of all this kind of stuff. The main things that are different: a sponsored search has 100% of the cash required to pay the person looking for the company, and the money needed to acquire the business is secured upfront, okay? So it's fully funded. The medium to large, so in the typical range, we're talking like maybe 5 to 20 million in revenue type businesses. The searcher, the ETA entrepreneur, so Mal, 50 year ago, me 22 years ago, has medium to high management experience. So they've led teams, they've run a division, they've got general management, profit or loss experience. They tend to look for companies for sale that are enduringly profitable businesses, that are healthy, scalable, have a track record of success. Maybe they're going to keep it for 5, 10 years and sell it, or maybe they're going to hold on to it for the long haul. And the searcher has the opportunity to earn 10 to 30%, regardless of how much they put in. And we'll look at some math here in a minute. Traditional search fund, and I mentioned, if you want to look at some of the data on this whole thing, Stanford's got what they call the Search Fund Primer, and the latest one was published last year. They mostly study traditional search. The searcher is 100% funded, okay? So they basically have negotiated with investors to get funds to pay them to search full-time, typically for up to 2 years. The acquisition isn't necessarily funded. It's only going to get funded if they find something that is attractive to a cohort of investors that they've lined up. Sponsored search usually has fewer investors. In my case, I had one. I don't know how many Mal had when he did his acquisition. Traditional search, they tend to have a lot of investors. So if they want to pay themselves $100,000 a year while they're searching, they might get 10 people to put $20,000 in to cover a $100,000 paycheck for 2 years. So they get 10 people who are willing to bet $20,000 that person might find something that they might invest in. And they usually get first right of refusal on the investment, and they get some other preference as a result of helping to fund the search. Management experience can be low to medium. Sometimes they have no general management experience. They tend to do what's called a proprietary search. So they're looking for a very specific type of company that is probably not for sale. So they'll identify a company that's got a lot of positive industry dynamics, a lot of recurring revenue, not super complex to run. If you want to see examples of this, we're having a pitch competition. We got who's in the pitch competition in the room? I know we got some back here. We're going to have 5 teams presenting acquisition criteria that if my memory serves me right, would all be good examples of what a traditional search funder might look for. certainly a sponsored search might look for companies like that too, but you'll get an example of what that looks like. Search or equity opportunity, similar, and then you've got solo search. So there's one of the hybrid models is self-funded search. So somebody might pay themselves to search, and then they'll go get investors when they find a deal. Or you could be totally funded. So you've got all the money to do it all on your own. Maybe you're buying a little bit of a smaller company. So the deal size might be, $2 million in revenue to 10 million in revenue, unless you just happen to have the capital required to buy the thing outright. And we'll look at some math here in a minute. You might have no investors. You might have a few investors. The management experience of the searcher tends to be medium to high. And oftentimes they use similar strategies as the sponsored search. Anyway, this is just to give you an idea that there's different models, there's different pros and cons. These are deeper conversations. This is a lot of what we talk about. We have a whole ETA curriculum at Weatherhead. Reed Tileston, who's going to be presenting right after me, is doing a course in January, like 3 full days, where you'll unpack a lot of this stuff in more detail, but I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of what these ETA entrepreneurs are doing out there and what the different models might look like. All right. Oh, so Kiley, before we jump off of this slide, so from your perspective, so people come to you and say, Kiley, I'm thinking about buying a company, will you lend me money? Or they say, hey, I found a company and I'm thinking about putting an offer in, will you support this? So if we think about one of the big differences between these models is the person you're talking to fully funded, or are they something else? And what do you, like when you're talking to people, is that an issue that comes up for you? Do you think about that in terms of like, okay, because you only have so much time. You only talk to so many people, and you've got to do financings, right? That's your job, to loan money to people buying businesses, right? Like how does that come up for you when you're meeting people based on kind of how they're set up?
Well, having money to back a deal is probably king, right? So when you come in
You
the
said
door,
that's king.
Yeah, as you come in the door as an individual buyer or a buyer with a sponsor, it's helpful to know that you're ready to go. Experience is the next thing, and just knowledge, the ability to understand how a deal works. Sorry, there's this side of the room. So everybody can be passionate about a business, but do they know how to actually analyze, does the business make money? And that's why I actually got into what I do right now. Back in like 2002, I jumped into banking to learn the numbers. And I thought, I'll learn the numbers and then I'll jump out. But I'm as close as I can get because we all deal with each other. A lot of these entrepreneurs, we work together. And I'm at the most entrepreneurial bank you'll ever know. So yes, quality of person, backing of money, and then understanding finance is important.
So the idea of typically a sponsored searcher, they can look Kiley in the eye, or they could look a business broker in the eye, or they could look a seller in the eye and say, I have the money to do this deal. Typically, the ETA entrepreneur is going to partner with an investor who has bought companies before. So you can also look the bankers and the brokers and the sellers in the eye and say, we know how to get the deal done, so the deal experience. And then usually, because that person has medium to high management experience, we have what it takes to run the company. I'm going to join the company. I'm going to be part of the team. That sort of thing. So that's what we would call a highly credible buyer. And based on what you just shared, it's important because if you're missing one of those key components, it might slow down the conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you have to dig in a lot more.
Yep.
Do a lot of background, just investigation.
And you can pull it off. You can pull it off the search fund primer. There's some really great. There's lots of examples. Couple 300 people who have pulled this off using the traditional search model, where they're sort of borrowing that, not fully in a way, but working it out. All right. So let's do a little bit of math. So this is sort of like a median size deal, okay? So we've got a quality company in an attractive industry, and again, come to the pitch competition, you'll see specific examples of this. Healthy company, good industry dynamics, company's got a good reputation, maybe an average player in the business. We like companies that have lots of healthy competitors. So let's say the business is doing $1 million in earnings, okay? So the techies in here might call that EBITDA, okay? But they're basically doing $1 million in earnings. These companies tend to sell for like 4 to 6, maybe 8 times, but that's starting to get out of the range depending on the type of business we're looking at. So let's say the valuation's pretty simple. It's typically a multiple of earnings. So let's say it's an $8 million revenue company doing $1 million in earnings. It's very possible that company could be priced at $6 million. So you could buy that business for $6 million, okay? Kiley, this is the part, I made this up last night based on, I want to see like if this looks like something that you would see in the marketplace. So I might come to Kiley and say, hey, I found this great company. I think I can get a letter of intent signed. I'm going to make a formal offer. I think the seller will accept $6 million for the business. I'm going to pay them $2.5 million that I'm going to get from you at CF Bank. I'm going to pay them $2 million from cash from me and my investor. So they're going to get $4.5 million at close. And then I'm going to pay them $1 million over time. I'm going to get them to take that over 3 to 5 years at a interest rate similar to what I'm going to pay the bank. And then I'm going to pay them another $500,000 if the business does well. It's going to be a contingent payment on the business having a little bit of growth and them sticking around and helping us out. So I think I can buy it for $6 million, and this is how I want to finance it. Do you see deals like this? Does that look in the range of something that is doable?
Yes, I have to say that the market has tightened, this is a lovely slide because, Scott's would be a little looser if we were looking at Scott's deals.
Looser,
yes.
looser, more creative.
Yeah, more creative,
I like the word creative.
Pull my hair out. I really don't have gray in hair, but I did after doing some. So leverage is usually 3 and under. Back when the market was a little rich,
So when you say 3 and under, so
funded debt,
funded,
so you're
3
good.
times earnings or under.
Yeah.
So in this case, it would be $3 million or under. When you say 3 and under, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's good. I'm impressed.
So that could work.
Yes.
And what are terms on a $2.5 million loan for something like this look like these days?
Well, it's a big science, but let's just go with if it's a cash flow loan and there's 3 and under and things are looking great, we'll call it right now 5 years amortization and term. Rates are anywhere 8 and up right now. And
what's the top end of up?
I don't know. I've never gone up that far because I bring in good deals.
So last time we talked, it was 9.5.
No,
so has it come down a little bit?
No, it's 8 to 8.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, I didn't ever say 9.5.
Maybe it was a bad week in the market.
Don't give that to my boss. He's in the back. I didn't give up 9.5. So,
well, 9.5 is better for you, isn't it?
For the bank.
Yeah.
Thinking about the bank and margins. Yes. So with margins being such an issue for banks, rates have gone up. We all know this.
Yes.
And lending has gone down. Lots of banks have frozen. Our bank is growing at 20% this year, so there's no freezing. So,
So banks are frozen, meaning they don't have capital to loan.
Yeah,
to lend.
they're waiting for those low price loans to drop off. Yeah. So, but 8 to 8.5 on a cash flow.
Because a year and a half ago it was 4 to 5%.
It was really awesome. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So there's a big difference.
Okay.
SBA loans, though, depending on how this looks, if you need 10 years, those rates are prime plus 2.5, so like 10.5%. So they're really rich right now.
So we're not going to talk about SBA, but I'm glad you mentioned it. It's certainly a lot of self-funded ETA entrepreneurs will definitely leverage SBA. We're talking more about what a typical like a sponsored or traditional search fund financing might look like.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. No, but it's great to mention. Yeah.
Yes. 6 months. Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. So that's what it looks like to value and buy So over here, this is a little walkthrough. So what does it look like for the entrepreneur potentially? So let's say the entrepreneur has saved $200,000, and that's probably medium to high. There's some people that have saved a lot more, depending on what stage their career is at and how prudent they are, and some people that have a lot less. There's plenty of traditional search funders that put $0 in. And so you might say, how does somebody with $0 and not a lot of hands-on management experience buy a company? I wonder too, but a lot of people are doing it. And there's and there are reasons. I'm being a little bit facetious, but we're not going to get into all those details right now. So let's say the entrepreneur puts in $200,000. There's $2 million in new owner cash, so they have 10% at the start. They put in 10% of the money, they own 10% of the business. So let's run some scenarios. Let's say 5, 6, 7, 10 years go by, and you grow the $1 million in earnings to $2 million. Let's say the multiple stays the same because it's kind of steady as she goes. So now that company is worth 2 times 6 is $12 million. And let's say the entrepreneur has earned some sweat equity. So maybe they paid off the debt, maybe they returned some of the capital to their investor, maybe they've improved, created some improvements in the business, whatever those, there's a lot of different creative ways you can create sweat equity triggers. And sweat equity is a big opportunity for the ETA entrepreneur. So let's say they've gone from 10% to 20%, so they've turned their 200 into 2.4 million. Okay, and so they've got some real capital now and some amazing experience and relationships with people like Kiley, relationships with their investors, pretty valuable. The investor, the value to them has gone from up to 12 million minus the ETA entrepreneurs 2.4, so they've turned their 1.8 million, which was their part, into 9.6 million. Okay, so they've had a 5x plus return. Not bad. Let's say it went from 1 million to 3. The multiple may have gone up because it's a bigger company. Private equity firms are probably sniffing around, that sort of thing. So the multiples can go up. So in this case, it's 8 times 3, 24 million. Let's say the ETA entrepreneur captured the full sweat equity opportunity, so they own 30%. So 30% of 24 million, they've turned their 200,000 to 7.2 million. And the investor turned their 1.8 into 16.8, 9.3. Okay, so for the investor, and again, Reed, who's going to present next, and I, and GJ, who is another faculty member at Weatherhead, and Simon Peck, we're identifying what research we're going to add to this conversation. Stanford's been tracking traditional search since 1984. The investors have persistently achieved over 30% IRRs investing in these deals, okay? And the searchers have done really well also. Or you could take your 1.8 million as an investor, you could put it into a startup where you have a 99% chance of losing 100% of the money, okay? Well, actually, I should have said 90. I did these slides late last night, but only 90% chance of losing 100% of the money. Or you can put in your 401k. These are really good outcomes. I'm not saying these are guaranteed. There's no free lunch anywhere. This is not for the faint of heart, but totally possible. Plenty of examples of this type of stuff happening.
May I just mention,
jump right
sorry
in.
for interrupting, but
No, not at all.
management buyouts are the only time, at least I haven't done one here, so I can't say what we do, but that's the only time we'll have little to no cash in. Typically, if a manager's high up, they have a lot of senior clout and they know the company. It's one of the lowest risk loans we can do because they're in there, they're running it, they understand it, and they have to bring a Scot behind them because they do need equity to do their deal.
Yeah.
And it is an SBA deal. But management buyouts, if you're in a company and you like it and you have somebody a little older, there's no reason why you can't start taking them out or take them out. And so that is kind of, I haven't had the opportunity to do one, but I sleep better at night because when I do all these loans, as he said, it's not 100% like if you put it in the 401k and something secure.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to.
Oh no, please interrupt. And So with a management buyout, would there be a big chunk of seller financing usually also?
Some seller.
So does that sort of cover the so-called equity piece to justify your loan?
No, I have a model that a group that actually brings the equity in. So it's
Yeah.
like you and team, and they'll come behind the manager, and then they know that manager, and that manager is going to take the company over
Yeah.
and do it well. But they have you as the expertise behind them.
Okay.
So the seller is more friendly. They will
Yeah.
give probably softer terms, but they still usually want out.
So let's say I've been running this company for 10 years and I'm the hired general manager, and maybe I've got like a phantom equity or a profit sharing bonus, and I say I want to buy this company now. So are you saying that I would go get some investors to bring like the $2 million in and then do a deal like this, or are you saying that I could do that deal without bringing the $2 million?
No, you bring the $2 million
Okay.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. So one of our panelists this afternoon, John Davies, he did that in a big way. So he was a executive at Progressive, and he worked underneath Peter B. Lewis, whose name's on that crazy-looking building across the street, they decided to sell off a couple of divisions of Progressive. This is probably 25, 30 years ago. And the way he told the story, he was a guest in the class that I teach at Weatherhead. He and Peter were talking about it, and Peter said, I'm going to go ahead and sell one of these divisions. And John said to Peter, if I can get investors by tomorrow, will you sell it to me? And he said yes, and he got investors, and they bought big divisions. It was divisions of a publicly traded company at that point, and did that. And they probably brought some, they had a bank to support it. So in that case, you're checking all the boxes. You got the cash, the company, and you probably have the wherewithal to figure out how to get through the transaction itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, great. Just real quick, this is just a slide to like how big is this market for these small companies? So there's 6 million companies with employees in the United States. Okay, so if you Google like how many companies in the United States, it'll say something like 32 million, but like 26 million of those are literally solopreneurs. It's people that have like registered an LLC and are solopreneurs, no employees. So there's 6 million companies with employees. Of the 6 million, 112,000 of the 6 million have over 100 employees. Okay, so the rest of them are under 100 employees. So there is a gazillion small companies out there. This 10 trillion, this is a headline that's floating around these days. There's a whole generation, the baby boomer generation, that's retiring and aging, and they're sitting on something like 80 to 90 trillion dollars of wealth that is going to transition to the next generation. Of that giant pool, there's like $10 trillion of companies that need to be sold, or they're going to close, or they're going to be handed off to the next generation. So they're talking about like the $10 trillion tsunami that's happening right now and will continue to happen over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. Do you see any of this? Are you seeing any evidence of this in your world?
Oh, absolutely. I think Cleveland has even a more aging population, right? So when anybody says they can't find something, I say go search more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I say too. Oh yeah, you didn't find anything yet? Okay. Ken Patsy, the CEO of Manufacturing Works. Is Manufacturing Works in there? Yep. A huge part of the service that they're providing is working with something like 2,000 manufacturers in Northeast Ohio, and like one of the biggest conversations is how do we prepare the company for transition, and so they're living it and it's a big, important, conversation. And they're doing a great job, and that's one of the reasons that we partnered with them on the event. Really quick. So we've been talking a lot about this opportunity from the perspective of an ETA entrepreneur who's wanting to go from employee to business owner. We talked a little bit about the opportunities for investors. What about people that own businesses that are, say, $5 to $10 to $15 to $20 million? Should they be interested in this phenomena? So I've been on the board at this Promise Partners group for 20-something years. It's a mentoring group for people that are interested in using ETA to go from employee to owner. Kiley and CF Bank, they're supporters and sponsors of that group, which is super valuable because they bring the kind of insights and expertise that Kiley's sharing today to that group. And in the last year, we've started to we created a whole new class of member for existing business owners because we realized there's quite a few reasons that existing business owners have been interested in this topic. And so if I own say a $10 million company, I might want to hire somebody who's dreaming of becoming a business owner who maybe doesn't quite have all the general management experience. So they might hire a growth partner. So basically bring in an apprentice who's dreaming about owning their own business someday, work together for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and grow the business together. The aspiring ETA entrepreneur has basically tried before they buy. So am I actually going to love this environment? Because maybe I got an MBA, maybe I was working at like Sean's in the back, he was working at a Johnson Controls. Johnson Controls, Fortune 50 company, is a little different than a $6 million company. So Sean could do that for a few years, try it out, add value to the business. Maybe that business owner wants to do some acquisitions, but they're busy running the business every day. They could bring in an aspiring ETA entrepreneur to partner with them, and they could maybe go buy a company, work on the deal together. Maybe that person that they brought on could help merge and integrate that business. Again, awesome experience for the ETA entrepreneur. You could potentially hire somebody that you could then go partner with. So I've actually done this personally a couple of times. I mentioned Sean in the back. Sean, get a little shot. There he is. So Sean and I met how many years ago? 20? Yeah. And he and I were together sharing this dream of business ownership. I went and bought a company. I talked to Sean about joining that company and helping us transform that business. He added a ton of value. We worked together for about 5 years in that business, and then we partnered with Sean, and he went out and found his own company, and we bought a company together, and now he's a CEO running another company. So we hired Sean, and then he became a investee and a partner. And we got to know each other really well because we worked together for 5 years. So in terms of understanding the value system and the capabilities, it was an awesome way to do that. And then maybe this is probably the least likely, but certainly possible. Maybe you hire somebody and it turns out it's a great fit. They love the business. You really like them. You think they'll be great to carry on your legacy, and they become the heir apparent, and you sell the business to them. So these are just examples of why we've seen some people who are existing business owners get interested in this topic, and the Promise Partners group has created a way for these groups to interact and get to know each other. Anything on this one? No? Cool. All right, this is just a quick, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. So I mentioned Richard Osborne was teaching this stuff 40 years ago. Richard started this Promise Partners ETA Accelerator 31 years ago. Last year we did this event. The original idea was to celebrate 30 years of Promise Partners, which has seen 65 people become owners of like 90 companies to date. And over the last couple of years, we've really been, thinking about, well, what's actually going on in Cleveland as a result of this 40 years? And it's really amazing if you look at the whole ecosystem supporting entrepreneurship through acquisition, whether it's the education going on at Case, Tri-C's here today. We're having some conversations about creating pathways through Tri-C to expose more people to this idea. Manufacturing Works is here. Kent State is here as well. Michael back there with the Ohio Employee Ownership Center. Really fascinating concept I'm learning a lot about as a potential seller, selling to the employees. Certainly something to consider. There's all kinds of stuff going on. There's a bunch of firms investing. So my day job is this, we have a holding company. There's big players like Riverside, and there's ScaleCo. Brendan Anderson's doing a workshop, I think, next door next, if you're interested in that. So there's investors. We have all kinds of community partners. It's an incredible what's going on in Cleveland to support this idea. All right. Okay, so I think this is the last slide. Then I'm going to turn it over to you guys for a quick question. So just a couple of the most obvious on-ramps to entrepreneurship through acquisition. So Weatherhead, we've got a whole ETA program. If you're interested in a full-time, part-time MBA, that's an opportunity. There's also non-degree opportunities. On the back cover of the workbook, there's an ETA course that's going to be offered in January. 3 full days. You can get a deep dive really fast, really efficiently. Events like this. This is designed to get the word out. Kiley and I and a lot of other people that we spend a lot of time with are very pro, small business ownership, and if you look at the stats, taking a $5 million business to 10, 15, 20, that's a very substantial business. Manufacturing Works, page 15 of your workbook, you'll see some of the programs that they've got for existing business owners. They're doing a ton. I mentioned what's going on at Kent State with the OEOC. There's something on page 31, and stay tuned for what's going to come of the conversations that we're having with Tri-C. And then Promise Partners. It's literally the only nonprofit ETA accelerator in the world. There are private investors that have like accelerator models where they'll hire somebody who's aspiring to buy a business, and they can go work for like a micro private equity fund or a family office, and basically go find a business to buy for them using whatever it is that they want to buy as the acquisition criteria. Promise is the only group where we've got dozens and dozens and dozens of people who are peer mentoring each other, working with people that have actually done it, getting advice from people like Kiley. 31 years of experience, 90 companies acquired or started, and that group brings in new cohorts once a year. So we just brought in the latest cohort in October. Last year we did 2 because we had this event and a bunch of people were interested, but it's a nonprofit volunteer-led group that's pretty darn well run for a volunteer-led group, but they're saying give us a little bit of time to breathe. So we're not doing a winter cohort this year. So if people who want to get involved with Promise, you got to wait till next October. However, if you take that ETA class, we feel like those people will be so well prepared. It's actually kind of like a fast pass to get into Promise Partners. So just plant a seed, for that. All right. I'm going to turn it back to you. So here's what I'd like you to do. So we talked about a lot. We looked at a typical deal. We heard from Kiley how she sees this stuff. We looked at the size of the market. We looked at opportunities for business owners. We looked at opportunities for ETA entrepreneurs. We looked at opportunities for investors. What I would love for you to do is just look through your notes, take or anything that comes to mind, and just jot an idea down. Just answering one or both of these questions. So what is one key insight and one key action you're going to take as a result of what we talked about today? Okay, so that's one way you could go with this. Or what is one thing that stands out amongst everything that we covered and why? Okay, so take a few seconds, think about an answer to that question. All right, here's what I'd like you to do. You can stay at your table, or you can talk to somebody, one of your next door neighbors. I want everybody to find a partner and just share what you wrote down or share what came up. We'll spend 2, 3, 4 minutes doing that, but find a partner and just share what came up for you to answer either one of these questions. And we'll bring it back to the front of the room, and I'm going to go grab some water because I've been talking too much, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap it up after that. So go ahead and find a partner and share what you came up with, and we'll come back to the front of the room in about 3, 4 minutes. Go. All right, we'll get everybody out of here so you can, we're gonna get a couple of quick questions. All right, so I'd love to, so Aaron's got a mic back here, and just so we can make sure we hear your comment, I would love to hear from 3, 4 people, what came up for you? Just, an answer, a key insight, a key action, or something that stands out, based on the conversation. Who'd like to get us kicked off? Got right over here.
Just curious, in terms of kind of the segment that you're looking at, is it your experience, there's a lot of private equity money out there. There's a lot of deals being done in the private equity space. Are the size of the businesses that you've kind of targeted or identified typically kind of below the radar of at least the larger private equity firms? Or, because my experience is that these companies that have $1 million in EBITDA are getting picked off pretty quickly. Yeah,
they're definitely on the radar. I think there's 2 dynamics, I think, and I'm going to answer this quickly because I want to hear from a couple other people. I want to get you out. But the 2 dynamics I see is, for a lot of private equities, it's just too small. They have too much overhead, and unless they have a real roll-up strategy and they're going to buy it and do acquisitions immediately, they will buy $1 million EBITDA or no EBITDA if they have a big roll-up play in mind. The other dynamic is the sellers don't always want to sell to private equity because they really care about the legacy of their business, and private equity just has a different mandate. Average holding 5-7 years, and that doesn't sound great to a lot of sellers. And so the ETA entrepreneur is a real advantage because typically it's very personal to the ETA entrepreneur, and they're going to make a long-term run of it, and they're going to take really good care of the business because they have to. They're a financial buyer, not a private equities. Technically would be considered a financial buyer, but they're going to buy and scale and sell quickly. The ETA entrepreneur is going to buy and hug and love and grow and take care of the people and the customers. So that tends to be what happens. Another comment, please.
Yeah, hi.
I think just hold a little closer.
Okay, there it goes.
Yeah, there you go.
Hi. So I have a company that's in your scalable chart there, and then Cameron here, who was my partner. He's in the 2-year startup, but we both interestingly have the same thought, and that's how do you guys have a program or something for the business owner? Because I'm more intrigued as to how do we meet the goal of the CTA? What do we do in our businesses to prepare for that?
Yeah.
And I think that's an intriguing question for a lot of business owners. Is how do you do the things along culture, what you're doing in the books, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so I would say there's whether you have a family company or not, Weatherhead does some great family business offerings that work for anybody that has a $5, $10, $15, $20 million business. A lot of the topics, developing the next generation, whether they're your kids or your team. Manufacturing Works has a lot of stuff if you're in that particular space. Promise Partners, you're going to fill out a survey at the end, and there's a whole thing of ETA resources. There's a bunch of books about, we spend most of our time at Promise Partners or at Weatherhead talking about how to go from employee to owner. But, I own the business now. I got to run it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's a huge conversation. Okay, I spend just as much time in my real world day job doing thinking about that. There's a bunch of books, and that's a whole another topic that's super important. But as a small business owner, preparing the business, for scale, preparing it for transition, or just growing it and maximizing, building the culture, building the team. Those are some quick off-the-cuff ideas. Kylie?
And then I think Meet It and More, wow, we can hear me now, is a sponsor, I feel, at
Yes.
least I heard that. And
Yes.
so they have a lot of succession planning, accounting help. And probably your biggest thing you need to do is get your numbers in order. Us all entrepreneurs running around, we don't like to tick and tack and put them in files. So I think Lloyd Bell is he in here? I don't know if he's here, but he's in the other room. So if you look for Lloyd Bell, he's here for Meet and More, and he's one of the guys that spearheads that program.
So we're gonna have about a 15-minute break. Aaron's gonna do a couple of wrap-up comments. I'll be around in between sessions. I'll be here all day. Kylie will be here all day, and we're gonna wrap up so you guys can get a refill before the next sessions. And I'm gonna turn it over to Aaron.
First of all, thank you very much, Scott and Kiley. Super well done, good comments. Please, round of applause. I have a gift for both of you guys. Thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to emphasize a couple of points. Scott definitely hit it hard, so I'm going to be brief with my comments. The January 5th through 7th ETA learning session. Back page of your program, definitely need to see that. Also, if you turn on the inside cover, check out the learning sessions. I think there's one this Friday and next Wednesday. You can hear from Scott about what's going to happen in January. Definitely check this out.
And Reed will be there too on Friday, who's teaching the course. So if you're interested in the course or Promise Partners, check out one of those webinars Friday or next Wednesday.